Good afternoon and welcome to another Select stream. I am Tess and I'm joined by my co-host and colleague Jig, and today we'll be discussing SharePoint, Teams and Outlook and how they all work together. So our guest today, who will be taking you through all of this wonderful stuff, is our very own Nick Ellis, who is our digital transformation consultant here at Select Technology. So hi Nick, thank
Hello.
you for joining us. We're really excited to have you with us today for this webinar. I think we're going to learn a lot. So I think for those who don't know you, it'd be great if you could provide a bit of an overview of who you are, what you do, and also what you're going to be talking about today.
Yes, well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. So who am I? So I'm Nick Ellis, as you said, digital transformation consultant. I have been in IT for about 20 years, I think. And I tend to specialise in applications and processes. So I'm not the man to fix your printer, but I can help you understand the processes that mean you don't need a printer. So yeah, that's kind of my background, and what I do in terms of for our customers here at Select is help understand the processes, document how processes work, and then how we can translate those into technological solutions, be that creating apps or using the capabilities of Office 365 to automate processes or to improve the quality of data or that kind of thing. From very simple kind of one-day implementations of here you go, bish bosh, we've solved a problem and delivered some value very quickly, which you can do with Office 365, all the way up to probably multi-year projects that we run deploying CRMs and ERPs and other three-letter acronyms that IT people are renowned for using too many of. So yeah, that's what I do really. I make stuff work and I make work easier. Oh, I like that. I might keep that.
Oh, we'll have to write that one, won't you?
Yeah.
And what are we going to be talking about today, or what are you going to be kind of taking us through in regards to SharePoint, Teams and Outlook?
Yeah, so in the course of my my work, and I obviously with colleagues in the business, one of the things we get asked a lot is kind of what is SharePoint, what's it for? Because we go out to business and say, hey, you should use SharePoint, it's really cool. And then they go, yeah, what's it for? And so that's what is it? What's it for? What can it do? I'm going to hopefully try and dispel. I'd be interested among those watching if you can use the chat bit to. I'd be really interested to hear about your impressions of SharePoint now, before I start talking, and I'm hopefully going to try and dispel. I think a few people have got a slightly, let's say, a not fully up-to-date view. SharePoint 10 years ago was an on-premise application. You ran it on your own server. It was fairly limited. It was before the days of HTML5 and all those good things. And to be honest, the product that we call SharePoint now, although you can see the heritage, it's a bit like comparing kind of a brand new BMW 5 Series with a Model T Ford. There's sort of, you can see the heritage, but they are very, very different things. So I want to try and dispel some of that. Another question that I get asked a lot is, should I put this in SharePoint or should I put this in Teams files? We're going to talk about that and what the difference is between the two. Bit of a spoiler, there is no difference between the two, but I'm going to explain why they exist in SharePoint and in Teams. And then also from there, we move from Teams into Outlook, and people again comment, oh, should I do this in Teams or should I be doing it in Outlook? I don't know, it's a bit confusing. I've got these different messaging tools. What should I be using and when? So that's kind of, broadly speaking, the agenda. What is SharePoint? What can it do for you? And then what is Teams and what can that do for you? And then how does it all interact with Outlook? Ta-da, that's it. Yeah.
Cool.
So I'll just crack on, shall I?
Yes, please do.
I'm waiting to be chaired into the next part of the agenda. So, yeah, SharePoint online application, part of your Office 365 license, part of every Office 365 license. So, basically, it's the underpinning technology for all of Office 365. And I can hear my technical colleagues going, "Oh, actually, no, that's Microsoft Graph." But in terms of the usability, it's the underpinning technology for all of it. So it's where you put your files. But it's much more than that as well. So, for example, you've got you can use it for internal blogging. You can use it for lists and data management, for simple event management. I don't want to get too carried away with the complexity of the event management function, but it is there. Planner, integrating with or showing particular parts of external websites, and so on and so on. There's all sorts of things you can do with it. And a lot of that is very tightly integrated with Teams as well. So yeah, so we'll kick on with a with a little bit of product demo. I don't want to be too product demo-y in this one because there's a lot of product demo webinars out there, and I would direct you to but we'll send out some links as a follow-up of some good examples of those. Not all of them ours.
Yes, we've actually had a comment from someone already saying, I'm not a fan of SharePoint, but willing and happy to be educated. So I think that's your challenge for this webinar, Nick, is to convince this person that SharePoint is a good thing.
Yeah, and I understand why. Commonly, the reasons why people say I'm not a fan, I love the but willing to be educated. That's great. Thank you very much for that. But yeah, the reason why people are not a fan generally is because they're trying to use SharePoint as a file management system in the same way that you're using your historic, your online, your C drive, and your not C drive actually, but your lettered drives that you used to have back in the day. And if anybody's very young and doesn't remember those, lucky you, because it was horrible. But so if you're trying to take that experience and replicate it into SharePoint, you're going to find that frustrating. It's not going to work. And the reason is because it's a different thing. It replaces the need for those lettered drives, but it replaces it in a slightly different way. So that's why people find it frustrating. A bit like, everybody loves a car analogy. I'm going to give you a car analogy. The park brake in my car, I have a Kia Niro because it's a hybrid and I'm cool. And the park brake in a Kia Niro is actually a foot pedal. It just took me ages to get used to that because the park brake is either a lever between the two front seats.
Like handbrake, you mean?
Yeah, the handbrake. Yeah, but it's not a handbrake. That's why I'm saying park brake, because it's a foot brake. So it's very strange. It took me ages to get used to it. Now I've got used to it. It's fine. But and that's what I'm saying. It's kind of the same thing of like, I've got to get used to doing this differently, even though it delivers the same benefits. And in the case of SharePoint, not so much in the case of my foot pedal, delivers a lot more benefits as well. My foot pedal pretty much stops the car, that's all it does. So here we are in SharePoint. Now, the bit that people are most commonly familiar with is this stuff, document management. And one of the things that we hear quite a lot is, so I have to save it locally, and then I have to drag and drop it into SharePoint to save it into the cloud, do I? I hear that one a lot. And the answer broadly is no, you don't. But I understand why people feel like that, because what you can't really do is just save to a lettered drive like you used to do. I accept that you can't do that, but you can do something rather different. So firstly, if you're starting, you can start in your document library, and you can, he says, I've gone straight to the new button. Where is the new button? Love it. Have I scrolled off to the side? I love stuff like this. The new button's fun. Under normal circumstances.
See it as well. Have they moved it?
Have they moved it? Or have I, possibly I'm in an account that doesn't have permissions to create new in this site actually. So what I'll do is I'll jump out into another site. There you go. I love stuff like that. Yes, it's because this is the corporate intranet and this user doesn't have access to do that. So this site here, let's go to here, to a document library, documents. So you can, if you've got permissions to do so, you can start the file straight into SharePoint. Love a good start. It's always good, that, isn't it? There you go. Look, there's a big new button there. So
Yay!
New.
Found it.
At the top of that new, you can sort of choose various different files that you can create straight from here. So I can, in fact, just as well as folder. Obviously, if I want to put a folder structure in here, I can just hit new Word document, and it will spin it up to here in the web version of Word. I can. You'll see in a second once it's finished loading. I can actually also open it out into the desktop tool as well. There, open in desktop app. So if you're not tied, but what you've done is you've started in SharePoint, start the file, pop it open in Word, and that connection will maintain. So it will then just self-save all the time. You don't even need to remember to press save.
That is an amazing feature. That's like one of my favorite features, is the autosave.
Yeah.
So you start there, pop it open, give it a name at the top. I mean, you see here, just I say I can start working. You've got most of the functionality that you're going to need for in Word in the web version, but if you do, some people are just more comfortable in the desktop version. I get that. But if I was to, I actually can't because we're on my own PC and this is a demo tenant. But if I pop this out from here, you get the file, and as I say, it will maintain that. And I think it's about every 30 seconds, it just checks it in, checks it in, checks it in. There is a slight risk with this, which Tess, I know you're familiar with because I've done it to you, which is somebody's got a template file that says, here's our presentation template. And you go, oh, I'll open that and I'll start working on my thing. It will also overwrite that. So it's always a good idea if you're doing that, open the thing you need, do save as. And I'll just
to go off on a bit of a tangent from that,
yep.
The next couple of weeks we'll actually be doing one of our 2-minute tutorials, which is like a video that shows you very quickly and easily how to do lots of things that we wish we knew how to do with Microsoft 365 and other computer bits on version history.
Ah, excellent. Version history is
how you can
a really cool feature, yes.
Yeah, so how you can actually get back to the original version if, like you say, you've saved over a template or you've made changes to a file that you didn't mean to make, or had forgotten to share another version, save the version rather.
Or you just need to branch it out. You might find actually I still want to keep this one.
Yes.
But I want to retrieve the one that was 4 versions ago to pull that out to create another file from that. You can do that as well. So you can create branches of these things as well. So that's kind of the idea. What I can't show you, just because the problem of it being a different business, is once you're in Word, when you load Word and you go to open, these files will be at the top. Word is now completely integrated with SharePoint, so it will say, here's your most recent files that you worked on, and this is true of Excel and PowerPoint as well, by the way. Here's the most recent files that you worked on, even if you only worked on them in the web version. Word will still go, well, you were working on that one on the web version because you were in a coffee shop, and now you're in the office and you're in full Word. That's fine, and it just syncs it all together really seamlessly. It's very, very cool.
We've actually had a couple of questions in relation to this.
Okay. So, wow.
They're quite similar. So one's, I struggle with amending docs, for example, in Word. It doesn't appear as user-friendly as the app itself. So I think what they're saying is they struggle to amend documents in the web browser. And is it better to use that? Which one is it better to use?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I as I say, it is you'll have most of the functionality. You haven't got all of the functionality, and certainly if you're looking for some of the advanced formatting stuff, doesn't work as well in the web version. I'm not going to pretend to you that it's as fully functional, but certainly if I was working on a document and just going, okay, this is heading 1, this is heading 2, here's some text, here's a heading 2, here's some text, not worrying too much about the format, I think the web version is fine. When you get to the point where you say, okay, now I want to change what heading 1 and heading 2 look like, and I want to change it, and I want to move my margins, and you can do it in the web version, but it is a lot easier in the desktop version. So I think, yeah, to Stephanie's point, yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to pretend it's absolutely perfect. And to be fair to them, I don't think Microsoft would pretend it's absolutely perfect. It's a solution for when, for those times when accessing the desktop version isn't appropriate, or you haven't got time, or whatever. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about in here is augmenting files with additional data. So we were in here. So one thing you definitely cannot do in your old-fashioned file server is you can't add any additional information. And I'm talking not about information that's in the document, obviously you can do that. I'm talking information about the document. So when you do file save, if you go to Windows Explorer, you right click and you get properties, and it will tell you who created it, when they created it, when it was last saved, and who it was last saved by, and the file size. And that's pretty much all it's going to tell you. What you can do here is you can actually create additional columns of information that tell you things about that document. So for example, we've got on here customer, a document type, a sign-off status, and a target audience. These aren't real documents. I mean, as you can see, there's 2 copies of The Mystery of Edwin Drood by Wilkie Collins in there. But yeah, so you can build out on here. Now, what that means, a lot of the time you used to see, and still do see, in fact, file structures which are attempting to kind of replicate this functionality. It was an attempt to add more information by using the folder structure. So maybe you'd have a customer folder, and then you'd have a service reports. I mean, I'm guessing here, and I'm thinking from an IT perspective, but service reports, quotes, I don't know, it's a designs, technical designs, whatever it might be. And then maybe within the service reports, you're going to have folders for January, February, March. You know, you get the idea. So what all that is really doing is providing additional information about the file, so you know how to find it. The joy of these is that you can make that flat. So you just go, I'm just going to bang it in that folder, and then I'm going to answer 3 or 4 questions about it. And then, so if I want to say, actually, do you know what? I know that what I'm looking for is a proposal. Okay, so I can filter out the other stuff that isn't proposal. Cool. And I know that I'm looking for a proposal. Oh, hang on, I know it was a Microsoft one. So let's filter down by that. And actually, it was the internal. This does not that this makes any sense if it was a proposal for Microsoft, but only for internal consumption. But you get the idea, and you can filter down and down, and there you go. That must be the file that I wanted. I don't need to know anything on the kind of the left-hand side. I don't need to know who created it. I don't need to know when. I don't need to know what it was called. Just if I go, there's an internal audience proposal. I suppose it does make sense, because you might say it's internal until it's published and ready to go, and then it becomes customer-facing. That kind of thing. But you can use that to filter and search for things much more effectively, I think, than having to remember, oh, it's going to be in this folder, clickety, 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 click, until eventually you get to the thing you want. The other thing, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it actually solves the problem of, where the hell do I save it? Do I save it in this folder because it relates to that? Or do I save it in that folder when actually you can put it in one place and it relates to both?
Chuck it all in the same place. Sorted. Yeah. Oh, you broke my flow. What was I going to say? I was going to say, oh yes, that you can also save these filters. So if this is a filter that you want to use a lot, I know that, you know, in my job, in fact, I just did one for a finance department where this is invoices, and then there's some information about, you know, who's the supplier, what's the approval status, how, you know, has it been approved, when was it approved, has it been paid by the purchase ledger team, and we've set up a permanent filter for them so that the purchase ledger clerk has got it filtered to approved and not yet paid. That's her job list for the day.
That's so cool.
All the automation behind that to get it to that stage, she doesn't care. I don't need to see this until it is approved and not yet paid. And then her only job is to just change that not yet paid to paid, and it disappears away. You know, so you can use those and keep those as permanent views. So that's what these are. So that is that.
Great.
Any more questions about that?
We've just got one question. I think this is in relation to, I suppose, stuff that's already saved down. So saying, will this work with his existing documents too? I don't know if they're referring to the autosave.
Well, if they're setting autosave, yes, once it's in SharePoint, yes. So if you've got a file somewhere else, you press save, stick it in SharePoint or OneDrive, then that will turn on the autosave. If they're asking about, can you add columns to existing that you've already got in SharePoint, once they're in the document library, the owner of the site, and there's an important distinction. So you see this one, I don't have add column because this person, he's called Richard. He doesn't really exist. He doesn't have a plus on this site because this is the kind of corporate intranet. So he doesn't have the ability to add data here. This site, he is an owner of the site. So this is the project site. He's an owner of the site, so he can go add column and just say, okay, I'm just going to add a hyperlink column here. It'll take a second. Just got a link, whatever. Hit save, and then that is then available to every document in there. It does go through the folder structure as well. So the only thing I would say about this is if you need different sets of columns, you have to have them in different libraries. So that's the only point where you start to get near or have to remember where to save it. But generally, you know, most
everything from an autosave perspective, if it's saved in your, I think even if it's saved in your OneDrive, it has
OneDrive or any SharePoint site,
automatically put on autosave. One question that I just have is, if I was to just start a Word document or PowerPoint from scratch, you know, just from my desktop, rather than, you know, starting new from a SharePoint site, how do I then save as into SharePoint? Well,
you very much answered the question there, because the answer is with the Save As button. So
it's quite straightforward.
Yeah, you can, as long as your Word is signed into, or whatever as long as your Office installation is signed into your Office 365 account, you can do File Save As, and it will show you a list of the sites. Now, this kind of brings me on to a conversation about the distinction around sites, but Office File Save As, it will give you a list of the sites that you can save files to, and you can just do it from there. You don't have to, if you really, really hate SharePoint, and there's one person on here who I know does, not one of us three, by the way, somebody who I know has joined. You don't have to look at SharePoint ever. You can do it all through Word and Excel and PowerPoint if you like. But it will
save to the right place.
It will save it into SharePoint. It'll get all of the auto save functionality and all of that stuff. You can do it all through the File Save As in the Open menu if you want to do that. That's entirely fine. It works perfectly. You won't have the benefit of those additional columns. That's the only thing I'd say.
Yeah.
Now, just before I move on into Teams, so sites, just a little bit about sites. People tend to think SharePoint is one site. And excuse me a second, I'm going to sneeze.
Bless you.
For days and days and days and not sneeze, and then I do it in a webinar. Typical, isn't it? So, SharePoint, the way to think of SharePoint is a service, and then there are sites that are SharePoint sites. I know that's a bit what I mean is, if you remember, I was saying here, this is the project site. which is inside SharePoint, and Richard is an owner of this, and then this is the corporate intranet, and Richard is not an owner of this. So they're just different bits. The reason I'm drawing that out is because it becomes relevant in Teams. So you can have access to multiple different sites from your Word. You might have the finance team or the management team or the production team or the marketing team. They've all got their own sites in SharePoint, and everything that you're a member of, you can see from there. Lastly, and I think I demonstrated this on the last webinar I did, I'm going to do a quick search now. So this is the Office homepage, which gives us access to all of the applications you can see down here, and you can see it's also showing up, these are the last few things that you did, and so on and so forth. And then if I search for Miss Rachel, it's gone and found two files called the Moonstone. One is in the landing site under shared documents, the other, the Moonstone, is in the project site under shared documents in the general folder. The reason I point that out is none of those files are called Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel, the Moonstone is a sort of late Victorian or early 20th century novel by Wilkie Collins, and there's a character in it who is called Miss Rachel. So this has searched not just the information about the files, but actually searched the content of the files itself.
Wow.
Aha. Now, the really interesting part, he says, is that is also permissions driven. So if I was searching, I know for a fact, if I was to search as the system administrator, it would bring me 3 copies of that file, because the system administrator can see everything, and there is another one in a different site that Richard doesn't have access to at all. So all of the search is also permissions driven. So, I mean, within our business test, there are files that you've got access to that I can't see, and vice versa. Certainly on OneDrive, if nothing else, you know, this will search across your OneDrive and all of the SharePoint sites that you've got access to, and all the files that somebody has chosen to share with you specifically. So if you, Tess or Jig, if you had a file in your OneDrive and you had said, oh, I'm going to share this with Nick, that would be included in the search pattern as well. So it's a very, very sophisticated search, and this box here, I use it all the time. I love it. It makes it really, really easy to find the files that you're looking for, and you don't have to know when it was done. You don't have to know who the customer was. You don't have to know the file name. You don't even have to know who the author was. You just go, I know it had the phrase potato crisps in it.
And do you know what? I'm just thinking back to in days of yore where we had the shared folders, like shared drives, and if you couldn't remember where you'd saved something, it was like lost forever, pretty much. Yeah. Or spend hours looking through every folder.
Yeah. But this, as long as you can remember one word in that document, it will find it for you. The other thing quickly up here, this is not really SharePoint, this is Office Home, but you can also search for information about people in your business from here. This is a fictional business, these people don't really exist, but you know, and then if I do a full search for Vanessa, it's going to find me the person, and then from there I can see the profile again. You'll see there's a file, that's the last file that Vanessa was working on that Richard has access to. So, you know, it will share all kinds of information. I can filter it by, you know, I'm just looking for PowerPoints by Vanessa, and if all you know is, oh well, I know it was Vanessa that did it. Can't remember anything else, but I know it was Vanessa. This will find it for you. So there is a whole list. There's 20 minutes there off the top of my head of functionality that SharePoint can deliver you that your file servers of your, I like that phrase, your file servers of your, would not do for you. Simple as that, just would not do that functionality, any of it. So very good. Teams. Now, so the next question that I'm often asked is, should I put this file in SharePoint or should I put it in Teams? When I can go to this SharePoint site, I've got this SharePoint site for my project, and then I've got the Teams group, and that's got files in it. Should I put it in SharePoint? Should I put it in Teams? The answer, as I think I strongly hinted at the top, is doesn't matter. So here we have a team set up. and you can see this is the Teams team. That is the one thing I do take an issue with. Microsoft's insistence on calling. I understand why they do it, because it's really simple for marketing, but it ends up with these ridiculous sentences. the Microsoft Teams team, and the other one is project. Well, we need a project in project, and we need a plan in planner. You know. So anyway, so you can see here we've got a range of channels within this team in Teams, and if I go to the general channel and I go to files and I wait a second.
Very slow.
It is a little sluggish, apologies for that. And you will see here open in SharePoint, and look, here's a copy of the Moonstone by Wilkie Collins.
Amazing.
And here is that link column that we just added.
So you don't even need to go into SharePoint if you really don't
need to look at SharePoint.
Just
you really don't like it, and you also don't like the file save as functionality, you can do it this way. This will work as well. And in fact, just to prove it, if I hit open in SharePoint, back in the same place. Yeah, so it is, there is no difference. It is the same thing. There was, and again, this is one of those helping people get over a legacy perception. Until about 6 months ago, this looked, it didn't have, you couldn't do the columns in here, and there were some other differences, and it didn't feel the same. But now it is exactly the same.
All synced up.
You can also upload from here. So if you're uploading into here, you know, it's SharePoint. These are the way to think of it. I tend to say is think of it as two different doors into the same room. You know, it doesn't.
That's a nice analogy.
Yeah, I like it. So you can come through Teams, you can come through the SharePoint website. It's the same place when you get through. In terms of the way they are hung together, if I go here and I'm going to create a new channel, and that channel is going to be called Product Launch Party. I can choose whether to make that a standard or a private. So there might be sometimes channels where you say, for example, let me give you a use case. If you've got a management team, which is the directors of your business and the immediate reports to those directors, but then there's one conversation that you just want to be among the directors, don't create a new team, create a new private channel and say, I'm limiting it to just the directors. The other people, although it's in the same team, the other people who are not in that group won't even be able to see that that channel exists, let alone get into it. So anyway, we'll make this one a standard channel for now, and I go product launch party, adding the channel. So it's adding it in, and it's going to create the usual sort of chat and what have you, and we can build that out with additional features. Now, if I go to files here, you'll see this is empty. Fine. Go to SharePoint. Look where we are. We're in Documents, Product Launch Party. And if we head back, all of these folders, there's one of these folders for every channel in the team. So every time you create a channel, it creates a folder specifically for that channel, and then that is where stuff gets saved.
So you don't have to make any new folders or anything. It just
does it all for you.
I mean, you can do, and you can come here if you want to. You can add folders into that, and again,
and that will just show up in SharePoint as well.
Here, create that there. Go into Product Launch Party. Give it a second. A second. It does have to have a little think about it. Yeah, I did press it there. I always have a little panic about, did I actually press the commit button? There you go, there's the folder. So yeah, so what you do here is there, what you do there is here. You know, doesn't really make any difference. So that is purely a matter of personal preference for me. The only real benefit, or maybe not the only real benefit, but certainly a benefit of doing it here is if I just quickly create file here, which I'm going to call quiche. That seems like good party food, doesn't it? Having created that file in Teams, same experience you will have noticed, drop down, new, Word, you know, all the same experience. It's loading up exactly the same piece of software at the top. You know, whatever you might want to put on your file. By the way, it's not actually how I would conduct a survey of quiche flavors. There's a different piece of functionality for that. We'll come on to that. I can open up a conversation about it in Teams. Can't do that if I'm in SharePoint. So if I want to start saying, actually, do you know what? The team, maybe I want to talk to them about this with Mariam. I want to start the conversation. She's going to get a flag now to tell her that that conversation has started, and it's a little bit slag. I don't know why. I think it might be because I'm on the web version that it's just a little tiny bit laggy. On the desktop, it's a much quicker experience than that. But Mariam is now going to get a notification saying, "Hey, Richard wants to talk to you about quiche." Come and have a conversation about quiche, and Mariam might go, "Oh, I've got better things to do." But yeah, so that conversation, if I now close that document, he says, close that document and come back to the posts. Oh dear, do come on. There you go. So that conversation there, whoops, forgive me, that's just clicked up a new tab option. Anyway, that conversation is now there to get in and out of, and you can open the file straight from that conversation. So you can see there, I can actually, there's quiche.doc, and in my options I can edit in however I want to download it, copy a link. We can reply to the conversation with all the Teams functionality and, you know, rich text browsing and so on. I have to say, if I was actually doing a survey of which flavour of quiche do we like, I would probably use the polls functionality in Teams, but we haven't got time to talk about that. So, does that make sense about the interaction of SharePoint and Teams for file management?
I think so. Unless anyone's got any other questions, if you want to pop them in now, but we haven't had any others at the moment. So we can always come back to
Carol, wow, you don't have to know the file name. Indeed. The not having to know the file name.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
That's quite good.
I have a thing with nouns. I can get halfway through a sentence and just go, nope. The word for glass has just escaped me. I just, you know, so not having to know specific bits of information like that, it is really, really powerful. And it also means that somebody can go, oh, I did a file about such and such customer. You know, okay, that's enough information. I know it was you and I know which customer it was about. That's enough. I can find it, you know. So, happy with that?
Yes.
Right, a bit of theoretical discussion now about Teams versus Outlook. Which should I use, Teams or Outlook?
Well, this is getting a bit confused, even lost for us.
So, I would say broadly, if you're having an internal conversation, do it in Teams. So, and you guys both know, if I need to talk to you, once upon a time, I might have, in the olden days, days of black and white and 4:3 ratio televisions, I would have probably sent you an email. And you'd have sent me a reply, and it gets all very confusing very quickly.
Oh, and you might loop other people into that email as well.
Yeah, you may well loop other people in. And so, yeah, and you kind of can't control because you don't know where it's going to go from there. And, you know, it's all a bit. And also an email, I know this seems ridiculous to people of a certain age, but an email feels quite heavy and formal now. You know, I think particularly internally, an email is sort of got the same weight as a letter now. It's like, oh my God, why is somebody emailing me? What have I done? You know, Teams, chat, really quick, really simple. So anything internal, I would say, do it on Teams. Now you might say, well, that's great, but I don't want to just talk to this person. I want to talk to 2 other people as well. Well, that's okay. You can do that. So where you might send an email to 3 people to start things going, I can just say, well, I want to have a conversation with Vanessa, but you know what? I want to include Miriam. Oh, Mariam even. See that? It noticed. It knew I meant Mariam, even though I typed Miriam. And maybe I want to include, I'm just trying to remember the names of these fictional people, Bailey Norton, and I can start that conversation.
Richard as well, isn't there?
Sorry?
There's a Richard as well, I think.
Yeah, but Richard is the person that I am, so
Oh, I
can't message myself, unfortunately.
Sorry,
Now, I can start a conversation going with all of them. Everybody can join that chat in real time, so it's an experience a lot like Dreadword WhatsApp groups. It's very much like that. Try not to think of it too much like WhatsApp groups because I don't like them. But the other thing you can do is also say, give that group a name. So there you go. There is now an ongoing conversation between me and the party planners. And if I really want, if I need to keep that on hand, I can pin it as well so that whatever else is happening with conversations, you know, it won't get kicked out and drop off the bottom of the screen. And you 2 will be delighted to know that you are both pinned on my teams.
Oh, you're pinned on mine as well.
That's special.
Going round.
So, yeah, so I think internally, Teams is the way to do it. The other advantage of it is, of course, if I want to share a file, I can do that. I can just attach a file here, either by pulling it from my OneDrive or uploading from my computer. And then there's only one copy of that file. And everybody's looking at the same copy of that file. And you're not having to go, hang on. I mean, I remember, as I say, I'm almost a dinosaur in terms of, you know, Neolithic. But I remember being given tasks to do as a young team leader, and it was like, okay, well, I'll do this spreadsheet and I'll send it around to all the other team leaders and they'll fill in their bit, and then you send it back to me and I'll get all the copies and I'll copy and paste all that into the.
Oh gosh, yeah, I remember all that.
It was horrendous. Now all you got to do is go, right, I'm just going to bang that spreadsheet up in here. Everybody's got access to it. We can all edit it. Even better, we can all edit it at the same time. Yes. Yeah. We can edit it at the same time and we can see what each other are doing to it while we're working on it. So in fact, Jig, can I just get you to log on as Mariam?
Oh,
a little bit of that while I just finish off. While you're doing that, I'll finish off with the Outlook. But Outlook, what's Outlook for? Outlook is for when you're communicating outside your business, broadly. So once you've crossed the boundaries, there are some interesting exceptions to that. So if you've got a really good trust relationship with a customer, you might want to, you can add those in to Teams as guests. If you're happy having that kind of conversation with your customer. I do that with particularly some of the long-term people and frankly, and the people that I enjoy talking to. You know, but always ask permission first before starting a Teams conversation with a customer. I find it's just a good idea. It's a bit intrusive to just go, oh, hello, you know, but so I tend to go at the bottom of about the 4th or 5th email. I tend to go, we could be doing this in Teams. Is that all right? Yeah, fine. And then we set it up and move it on to Teams. But anything formal, anything outside your business, Outlook is the place to go. Now,
oh, Nick, we've got quite an interesting question here, which I think you'll enjoy to answer. Is Teams as secure as WhatsApp?
Is Teams as secure as WhatsApp? That's a bit like asking if the Atlantic has got as much water in it as a swimming pool. Yes, Teams is much more secure than WhatsApp. Teams, you can absolutely control who has access to it. You can throw people out when they leave the business. For example, if you've got a WhatsApp group, what happens if you fire someone? Somebody's got to remember to. I mean, sorry, I hate to get bleak, but it sort of does happen, right? There have been several cases of what are called white hat hackers, which is basically people who hack into things to prove it can be done to hopefully to help solve these things. But there have been several cases of white hat hackers getting into business WhatsApp groups. The most famous of those is the UNESCO, the United Nations Children's Organization.
Yes.
they had WhatsApp groups in West Africa, and these white hat hackers were able to get into the WhatsApp group, and then from that they could extrapolate more information, and they were able to send to UNESCO, here, because your security isn't good enough, here's a list of all your staff in this country and their home addresses and their phone numbers and their social security numbers.
Whoa.
Nobody has ever managed that with Teams. I'm not saying it's never going to happen. I don't want to sound it's not my place to make that claim. I'm sure Microsoft would make that claim, but to date that has not happened in Teams, because you've got really sophisticated control over how you've got access. You can enforce multi-factor authentication. So if any of us in fact if I were to pick up my Mac that I've got over here, because believe it or not I have a Mac as well, if I was to pick up my Mac and try and log into our Teams, first thing it's going to do is send a message to my phone and say, is that really you, or is that somebody on the other side of the world that we don't know about? And if it was somebody on the other side of the world, I can just go nope and kick them out. The encryption, WhatsApp make a big play about encryption end to end. That is true. I'm not sure how relevant it truly is, but both systems are fully encrypted. So you set me up with a bit of a hot button. Yes, Teams is, I would say, much more secure than WhatsApp. And people that know me, and I know a couple of them are on this call, have heard me say, get off WhatsApp in terms of your business. It's fine for, look, I mean, I'm in a family WhatsApp group. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate it. It's fine for stuff that doesn't really matter, but I wouldn't want to use any particular business functions through it, or do business functions through it. The other thing is, WhatsApp is much harder to integrate with. So ironically, this is the flip side of it, but because of that security system all being built around Microsoft Office, Teams is all built around Microsoft Office. It's all the same authentication system. It's really easy to integrate your Word documents and all this different stuff. We've got a process, have we not, Tess, wherein Teams gets a notification and tells us if somebody fills in the form on our website, for example.
That's correct, yeah.
So can't do that with WhatsApp, you know. So there's I would say there are a lot of benefits. I understand it's a bigger, clunkier, heavier footprint application, and some people might go, oh, it just seems like a lot of work. The benefits more than outweigh the costs of that heavier application, in my view. Anyway, so I was about to say, and I honestly don't know, I haven't looked to see whether it's here on this channel yet. It's actually not, but in, oh, hang on, maybe it's because I haven't selected an email. What I'm looking for is the Share to Teams button. Yeah, it's not here yet. Rolling out over the course of April, May and June is this Share to Teams button. So, which is basically what happens if you get an email in from externally. So say I get an email from a customer and I think, oh, I don't know, I need to discuss this with Tess before I respond. Traditionally, what am I going to do? I'm going to forward the email to Tess and create a copy of it, and so on and so on. And we're going to have this backwards and forwards internally until eventually I go, yes, okay, now I'm ready to reply, and you know, and then I have to go back to the original one, and then I can reply. The Share to Teams button, which I'm slightly disappointed I can't show you, but it will be in here. Basically allows you to take that whole email, pump it into Teams. You specify who you want to talk to. So I would get that in that scenario. I'd get it, and I would say, right, I'm going to share this. I'm going to talk to Tess. Go. Tess then gets a full copy of the email and a conversation thread in Teams. So still, even where we've originated outside the business, the conversation inside the business is happening in Teams until we get to the point where we're ready to reply. Then you go back to Outlook and send it out. So, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say that's fabulous.
It is pretty cool technology. Some people in the first few days, I'll just say this: when you see that button appear on your Outlook, and you will in due course, When you see the share to teams button at the top, some people in the first few days have found it a little bit laggy. It seems to install the button and then take about 24 to 48 hours to work out which teams you're trying to send it to. Once you've had that for a couple of days, you'll find that will resolve. So that's kind of it, really. So SharePoint, file management, much more sophisticated than your existing file server, automatic saving, searching, augmenting with columns. It's a totally different experience. Don't try and use it as a direct replacement for your big old file store that you had on a server somewhere. Use it in the way it's sort of designed to use, and you'll find it a much more satisfying experience. Teams, it's the same files, but you access them through Teams. That gives you some benefits like chat and so on and so forth. Use Teams when you're talking between you and your colleagues. Use Outlook when you're going out of the business boundary. And that's it. I'm done.
I think we've covered everything. Excellent. Thank you, Nick. We've had lots of great questions today, so thank you to everyone for those. They've really helped to add to the webinar. We don't have any others at the moment. You've got the last couple of minutes just to get any in if you do have any other questions. So if you do have any more questions afterwards, Nick's details are just in the chat here as well, so you can easily get in touch with him to ask anything directly. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. I hope you've learned a lot. I feel like I've learned even more, even though I thought I was, quite au fait with SharePoint. So always good to learn more. And thank you very much to Nick for taking us through all that today. And this video will be up on our website afterwards. So you can rewatch it again or share with anyone else that might want to watch it, and you can follow us on LinkedIn for more information regarding any upcoming webinars that we'll have coming soon. So thank you to everyone, thank you to Nick, and goodbye.